Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Frivolous Writer, where you can join me on this journey of writing my very first novel. I hope that those of you who've been stumbling across this channel are probably on the same journey as me, where you've started this journey, you've stopped, you've started, you've stopped. That's been me for the last 20 years, roughly, where I keep wanting to actually write a novel. It's interesting because this novel has changed over time for me. I've had many ideas for a novel, but this is the first time in my entire life that I have actually committed to starting, and not just starting, but finishing a novel. And I know I've shared on this channel a few times already that this is tough. It's messy. It's hard. There's a lot of self-doubt that keeps boiling up inside of me. I'm reaching out to a lot of my friends who are also writers, some that are already published, some that are in the process of becoming published, some that are just doing it for fun because they just love to write. They love the process of writing and discovering what's going on inside their heads. So if that fits you in any capacity, I'm glad you found this channel, because really what I wanted was to create a space that would be safe for anyone who is on this journey, who has been stumbling through this on their own. I wanted to create a place where you could join me, where I'm going to be testing things out. I'm going to be trying things successfully, some unsuccessfully, and just really making myself able to actually finish. So here we are. Thank you to those of you for joining me from the very beginning. You know who you are. And those of you who are just joining me now on this journey of starting my very first novel. So on Tuesday, I read chapter 10 of my novel, the very first draft, the rough draft. It's not complete. There are plot holes. My writing is inconsistent, but I'm writing. And I know I shared with all of you, because I'm about halfway through and my novel has changed so much from the time that I started. Um, I wanted to explore how to finish. How should you finish your novel? Um, I'm writing my novel. More accurately, I've started writing my novel, and then somewhere along the way, my momentum really just started slowing. Um, that excitement that I had when I first started, that like energy, that thing that I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm now 3 months in. That momentum has started to dissipate. It started to fade a little bit, and my story is kind of left in limbo, because, I really thought I had a strong whole story. I had it in my mind. I wrote down my main beats, the main points that I wanted to have happen in my story. I started writing towards those things, and then it started to kind of fade. It faded off into uh, the sunset somewhere. It just faded into non-existence. And so now I'm just stuck, because I was thinking, okay, well, where do I want this novel to finish? Where do I want it to go? Knowing that this isn't my last novel I'm writing. I do have an idea for a series and how to kind of turn this into a series, but where does this novel lead to, and where do I finish it? So today, I wanted to walk through the 5 things that I have been trying to keep in mind uh, to actually finish my novel. Okay, part one, or point one, the first point I want to make is that the middle of your novel will always feel messy. No matter how good your idea is, the middle of the novel is always going to feel like you're walking in mud. It's just going to be, you're trudging. You're going to be second guessing your characters and your plot and your pacing and your point of view and all of those things that come along with now getting about halfway through. So this is just a normal part of the process. So learning to finish your novel means learning to keep going through all of that uncertainty. And I'm going to be the first to admit there is a lot of uncertainty. I know I shared this before, but I'm feeling a lot of like, why bother? Why am I doing this? Who is this for? Am I doing it for myself? Am I doing it for other people? Like, these characters aren't great, the story isn't great, it's really reductive, like I'm pulling from other things that I've read. It doesn't feel like it's authentically me. My vocabulary's not where I want it to be, my storytelling's not where I want it to be. All of that is super, super normal. So I was talking with my friend today who is a published author, and a freaking good one too. I read her book. It's phenomenal. And I had asked her, actually, this was just the other day. I texted her and I said, I'm finding that I'm stalling. I'm stalling myself. I'm not writing at the pace that I want to write. And so how did you get through this? And she was like, Taylor, that is normal. Do not stress about it. That's normal. It is normal for you to sometimes just sit down and look at the page and do nothing. That's a normal part of writing. And actually, I would be willing to bet that that's more of the writing that you do than the actual writing. So don't get discouraged. And I said, how did you like force yourself to finish? Where did you find the motivation and the discipline to finish your novel and go back and edit and re-edit and rewrite and all of that until you got it to a place that it was like fit for publishing? And she said, this is words from her mouth, which was actually super motivating for me. She said, you have to be in a place where the pain of not writing outweighs the pain from writing. So you have to get to a point where if you're not writing, you're actually hurting because you know that you need to finish this story. So I loved that. I thought that was super helpful. So thank you. You know who you are. You said that. But just remember, the story starts to take shape through the writing, not before it. So, and in my mind, it was always that process leading up to writing. And I thought, well, maybe because I've started and not been able to complete, not being able to finish, and getting to this point and not being able to like find the rest of the story, maybe it's because I wasn't meant to be a writer. And so to hear that advice from my friend who was able to write an incredible novel, and finish it and get it published, uh, that actually was like, oh, yeah, I was able to like breathe a sigh of relief because I was realizing, oh, it's not just me. This is a normal part of the process. And it's not this romanticized thing that writers do where you're just, an epiphany happens and then you're able to just deliver a fully fleshed out, not needing an editing piece of literature. So I thought that was super helpful. So thank you for that advice. So the other thing that I have to constantly remind myself, and we've talked about this in many videos on this channel, but the job of your first draft it just has one job, and that's to exist. It is not to be a good piece of literature. It is not to be like the most well thought out story with no plot holes, nothing. No, it is literally meant to just exist. So your job as a writer is to just put your ideas to paper. Get your story done, start to finish. It's gonna change. That's part of it. That's part of the draft process. So you just have to make sure you put your words onto paper. So this means letting your scenes feel really clumsy and unfinished. Your dialogue is gonna feel forced and you're going to stumble and it's not going to be great and your ideas aren't going to be super clear, and all of you have seen that in my rough draft so far. There have been chapters that I was like super proud of, and there have been chapters that I was like, God, I can't believe I'm reading this online because it's so bad. But that bad writing, that awkward writing, and that inconsistent writing is actually the most important thing because you're writing your story down. So you are finishing. So super important. Just get that first draft done. Don't let that voice in your head tell you that it's garbage, because you should just accept the fact that it's not great. because you're gonna go back and you're gonna rewrite. And I follow a lot of Reddit forums, subreddits about writing, and I read a lot of people's posts, and everyone's like, "How do you do it? How do you do it?" And the number one thing people say is write it down. Just start. And then I know that I've shared this about my own journey, but every time I've started writing, I usually stop because I'm like, this is so bad. And now I'm to a point in my own novel, I'm more than halfway done or about halfway done. It might actually go longer than I was originally anticipating. But where I'm at in my novel, I'm now to a point where I'm thinking back and I'm like, God, this isn't great. Why am I continuing? But I have to remind myself, just get it down, like write the story. And all of this is going to culminate in this part where I'm at now, which is, okay, now I'm halfway through. My story has completely changed from the time that I started till now. And I had an idea of where I wanted to end the story or what I thought the ending would be or where we're building towards. And now it's different. It's real different. Uh, but I think the most important part, so point number 3 I wanted to make is you really should kind of have an idea of the ending of your story, even if it's going to change. So you don't need to do a full outlining. And as a matter of fact, I shared I am not an outliner. I'm not a plotter. I'm a pantser. So I do it just off the seat of my pants. I'm writing. I'm letting the story tell it as I go. You don't need to have everything figured out, but you do need to have a sense of where the story is at least trying to go. So what are you trying to say in the story? It might be vague. It might be like, and then they reunite. Or as I was joking with my friend today when I was asking her, how did you know where your story would end? And she told me, like, I was writing and I knew that this would be where it was going to end. And I joked and I said, and they all lived happily ever after. And she's like, maybe not that vague, but you should have like at least what is this story culminating to? So uh kind of think like what's the beat? So maybe they do reunite. Maybe this truth is then revealed, or maybe someone chooses freedom instead of safety. So like it can be that vague, but it needs to have some kind of a ending that's going to sum up the entirety of the story. So why was this story important? And this is going to give your writing more direction. So it's easier to finish when you know what you're finishing toward. So even if it's not like I know exactly the scene that's going to end, maybe it's, I know the feeling I want to have or the message I want to have at the end of the story. So I found that kind of helpful. And then the fourth point I wanted to make is writing a novel means that you are definitely going to be rewriting this novel. So the real magic that you're going to experience is actually in revisions. So when you go back and rewrite, finishing the draft is definitely not the end. That's just the beginning of understanding what this story actually is going to be, because now you've got it on the paper. Now you can see a linear structure of what story you're telling. So really important that you do that. Just get it down. You're going to gain the ability to shape your story with intention. So don't pressure yourself throughout the process. You're just going to try and finish. So early writing can carry the weight of perfection. I've experienced that. I was already sharing that earlier. Um, because I kept telling myself like it's not where I want it to be or it's not as good as I want it to be. That's unimportant. The important part is actually just getting your story start to finish, because you know it's going to change. You are going to rewrite at least portions of this story. Some of it will feel very inspired and some of it will feel very incredible. And you're going to feel real proud about writing some of the things you write. There's times when I've written something and I was like, "Oh, that sentence just it feels good to have written that. Where did that come from?" Uh, there was one that Success is Mine pointed out on one of my chapters where I had written, "The silence stretched between them." And I don't know where that came from. But just writing what that feel and that made me feel good. So not everything is gonna need to be rewritten, and some of it will, most of it probably will, but your story at least is gonna be there start to finish. And then the most important thing, my last point, is you need consistency more than inspiration. So for those of you who sit down to write every day and you're like, "Oh, I'm staring at this page and nothing's coming." Yeah, I've been there. I got you. I know exactly what you're going through. My friend was like, Taylor, sometimes it's going to be sitting and doing nothing. Sometimes you open your laptop and then an hour later you close your laptop and nothing's changed. But that is a more consistent part of writing. But you have to give yourself the time every single day to write what you're trying to write. With that, you will start to uncover the story. So I know I've told you I was giving myself a 1,500 word daily goal. I've now reduced that. I don't give myself a daily goal. I give myself a time goal. So how long did I sit every single day to try and write? Whether words came out or not is irrelevant. I needed to allow myself the time to really think this story through. And that's where you're going to find the ending. And then as I was talking to my friend today, I said, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the ending. I'm going to write how this story finishes. And she's like, that's how most writers do it is you know where the end is. So now you're going to write to that ending. And it might change, like your goalpost might change from there, but you've got to start writing towards something. So that is where I'm going to leave it. But I want you to all think about the hardest part of writing a novel isn't the plot or the characters or the prose. The hardest part is staying with the story long enough to find a version that works. So you're not doing this wrong. You are not just telling stories to take time. You are still showing up. And because you're showing up for yourself and for the story, you are already succeeding. So just make sure that you give yourself a dedicated time every single day. It doesn't matter when or where or what. You just have to show up for yourself and show up for your story every single day. And with that, I want you all to have the most incredible rest of your Friday, a great weekend, and I will see you all next week when I read to you chapter 11. Oh, gosh. Anyway, have a good rest of your day, everybody.